Rue. Mrs. Sherry is my dog person. Sometimes when I go on a walk in my neighborhood, I meet some dogs that are much larger than me, and I do not feel very confident. Today, I've got a great story for you about a man who wasn't so confident to begin with, Gideon. We'll see if he was able to find the confidence he needed to do what God asked him to do. Many, many years ago, God's people, the Israelites, had stopped following God and living his way. God allowed the Midianites to take over their land. God's people hid in caves while the Midianites destroyed their crops and their animals. Animals? These Midianites must have been some awful people. The Israelites cried out to God for help, so God sent the angel of the Lord to Gideon, who was busy threshing wheat. In other words, he was separating out the part of the grain you could eat. The angel of the Lord told Gideon, "Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you." He told Gideon to go and save Israel. But Gideon wasn't so sure. He didn't see how he could do it. "Pardon me, sir," Gideon replied, "but how can I possibly save Israel? My family group is the weakest in the tribe of Manasseh, and I'm the least important member of my family." The angel told Gideon, "I'll be with you, so you will strike down the Midianites." But Gideon still didn't feel confident. He asked the angel for a special sign to make sure that God was really promising these things. God gave him this sign when he sent fire to burn some meat and bread. When the Midianites and Amalekites gathered to attack, Gideon blew a trumpet for the Israelites to follow him. But even as the army gathered, Gideon asked God for another sign to make sure God was with him. Gideon put a piece of wool out. He said that if the dew made the wool wet, but the ground stayed dry, then he would know that God had chosen him. That's exactly what happened. But Gideon still wasn't convinced. He put the wool out again. This time, he asked God to make the wool dry, but the ground around it wet with dew. Sure enough, God made it happen. At last, Gideon was convinced that God wanted to use him. Sometime later, Gideon camped with 32,000 men at the spring of Herod. They were preparing for battle. But get this, God told Gideon that he had too many men. If the Israelites won the battle with that many soldiers, they would think it was because they were so powerful instead of remembering that God was in control. God told Gideon to announce that any soldiers who trembled with fear should go back home. 22,000 men went home, leaving 10,000 men to fight. But God told Gideon there were still too many. God told Gideon to take the men to the water and have them take a drink. If any of them got down on their knees to drink, Gideon should send them home. Sure enough, that's what some of them did. Gideon told the men who had gotten down on their knees to drink that they should go home. This left only 300 men. Can you imagine? They started with 32,000 men in their army and ended with only 300. That night, God spoke to Gideon again. Gideon saw the fires in the midnight camp. God told him to go down and listen to what they said. Gideon did, and he heard one of the Midianites talking about a dream he'd had that showed the Israelites would defeat them. Gideon stopped to worship God. Then he went back to the Israelite camp. He gave each of his soldiers a trumpet and a jar with a torch inside, and he gave them instructions to follow his lead. They surrounded the Midianite camp. Gideon and his men blew their trumpets and smashed their jars so their torches shone bright. They shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" The Midianites panicked and got confused. They fought each other, then ran away. Gideon and the Israelites had won the battle. The Israelites were so impressed with Gideon that they begged him to be their king. But Gideon said that they already had a ruler, and that was God. At first, Gideon would have seemed like an unlikely person to lead God's army. He was afraid. He didn't think he could do the job. But in the end, Gideon decided to trust God. He decided to follow what God asked him to do. Because of that, God used him to lead the Israelites to victory. Thank you so much for letting me share this story with you.